Everything is black and gold, black and gold tonight. Yellow pumpkin, yellow moon, yellow candlelight. Jet black cat with golden eyes, shadows black as ink. When the world turns black and gold, then it's Halloween.
Thank you. My name is David Matlack. I'm with the Bloomington Storytellers Guild, and on behalf of the Guild, Bloomington Parks and Rec, and Monroe County Public Library, welcome to Festival of Ghost Stories. We bill this event as a 30-year tradition. Well, I started thinking, we've been saying that for a long time now. So I did some math, some higher math. Welcome to the 42nd annual Festival of Ghosts. Yes. And we couldn't do this without Parks and Rec. We want to thank Crystal Ritter and all her staff and volunteers. As you know, we're normally at Bryan Park. They provide the park, that wonderful stage. They have provided the stage, the refreshments, and the sound, and all the decorations. Thanks, Parks and Rec. And Chris Hosler somewhere here, and the entire staff of the Monroe County Public Library. Storytellers and libraries are like peas in a pod. Who here likes to scare people? Yeah, me too. So when I was little, I used to love to scare my sister, and it was around October when we had to start wearing jackets to school, and my brother and I were in the room to the left, she was in the room to the right, but the coat closet was in the hallway. And I would get home from school before she would. And my brother and I did not hang our coats in the coat closet, but my sister, Little Miss Perfect, always did. And I would get home from school before her, and I would hide in the coat closet and jump out. Boom! And why is it that when you're hiding, you suddenly have to pee so bad? I mean, oh, it would be terrible. I mean, would you just get home from school now? But she'd get so mad. She would scream and chase me out of the house. Then I got a little more sophisticated. I got a flashlight, and the back of our house was woods, and I'd go to her bedroom window and shine the flashlight and just start, and I don't know why, but she would look, and she'd get so mad. But then I got a little more sophisticated about scaring people, and the one thing I love about storytelling is people say, hey, where'd you get that story? And I tell them, at the library. So that's when I got more sophisticated about scaring people. I went to the library, and most of the stories you'll hear tonight you can find right here in the library. Excuse me, they're all true tonight, evidently. So maybe you'll find them in the newspaper. No, but no, we have stories from around the world. And speaking of stories in library, another event that we put on, the Guild puts on with Monroe County Public Library is Winter Telling, now in several decades. Yes. Well, we'll do a count, yes. Every year we do it, we get younger. But that will be February 9th, 7:30 in the auditorium. And myths, legends, folk tales, fairy tales, love stories from around the world that will help you understand your place in the world just a little bit better. Okay, so the refreshments are out there, hot cider, restrooms are down the hall. And if the lights are bothering you, feel free. This is storytelling. This is not opera where they close the doors. You never know, where they close the doors and don't let you in. If you have to get up and move your seats, and people are welcome to come up front and have a seat here, but whatever, just please enjoy the stories. Thanks.
Good evening. Autumnal greetings I bring to you. My name is Patty Callison, and the story that I'm bringing tonight is a Cree story. And actually, I didn't find this in a book at the library. I heard someone tell it. And her name is Gail Ross, and she's a professional storyteller and Native American. And so I want to share with you this Cree story from Gail Ross. Now, there once was an old man and an old woman who lived way up north, where the nights are long and the snow is deep. And they had gone through many winters and now were bent, their hair as white as that snow. But one winter it was particularly cold. And day after day, the old man would go out looking for game. And little by little, he realized that most of the animals had left the area, going south to warmer climes. And so he and the old woman were hungry. In fact, he would go out every day, went out every day for 3 days and didn't find anything. He and his wife were starving. Finally, the old man said, "Now listen, I'm going to go out and I have a feeling that I will find some game, find something for us to eat. But there's only enough firewood for one good hot fire. So don't burn it." And with that, the old man left. Now, the old woman had never been too nice. But after 3 days and being pretty hungry, she was not in a good mood. Thinks he's gonna go out hunting while I stay here and freeze? I think not. And so she gathered the firewood together and she got a good fire going. Oh, it felt so good. Oh, she got closer and closer to the fire. Oh, her hands were so cold and, oh! She burned her finger. After 3 days, she was pretty good. So she stuck her hand in the fire again. Ooh. Ah! Pretty soon she'd eaten her whole hand up. And after a while, it all tasted so good that she didn't even bother to cook it anymore. And so that all that was left there was one hanging skeleton. That old woman, she was still hungry. And she thought about her husband coming back. So she crept into a dark corner and waited. After a while, the old man came back, and he'd found a deer, and he had it over his shoulders. He was bringing it home. He was so proud. Wouldn't she be surprised? And he walked in, and, "Old woman, here I have a deer for us, and you've used all the wood." "Oh, that's all right," he heard. "I like my meat raw." And from out of the corner there arose a skeleton which moved toward him. Choo, 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 choo. Ah! He threw the deer down, and the old man went racing out of their home. Did I mention he was old? And he ran, and behind him he could hear. Choo, 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 choo. As that old woman, her skeleton hanging loose but moving quickly, raced after him. Now he ran as long as he could until finally he came to a canyon with a river flowing through the bottom of it. And he knew that he couldn't make it over it. Oh, I shall just have to let it catch me. I can't go on. And then he noticed a little house. And a little woman came out of that little house. And she said, "I will help you if you will pick me some berries and chop me some wood. I'll help you get across to safety." Oh. The old man looked, and he could see the skeleton getting closer. So he, "All right." And he picked some berries, and he chopped some wood. And then he watched as the little lady went to the edge of the cliff, and she said some magic words. And then he saw her as she grew and grew and grew, and then she fell over, her fingertips catching the other side of the canyon. And with that, the little old man walked across the bridge that was that little magic woman. "Oh, thank you," he said. And he watched as the little old woman, the magic woman, again went to the other side and returned to her normal, small size. Now, not much time went by before that skeleton came up. She said, "Ah, I see that old man. Get me over there." And the little magic woman said, "Well, before I do, you have to pick me some berries, and you have to chop me some wood." "You think that I've got time to pick berries and chop wood? You'd better get me over there, or I'll eat you." And with that, the little magic woman went to the edge of the cliff, and she said some magic words. And with that, she began to grow. And she grew longer and longer. And the old man across the way said, "What's she doing? She's going to let that skeleton come over and eat me. I can't run anymore." he sat down. And as she got long and loose enough, the magic woman fell over until her fingertips reached the other side of the canyon. And that skeleton woman began to walk across the back of the little magic woman. And the little magic woman said, "Oh, I feel my back getting loose. I feel my arms start to sway." And the little magic woman, who was a bridge, began to sway and to twist and to turn, and finally, the skeleton woman fell off. Down, down, down. She went down to the bottom of the cliff, and the bones shattered into many pieces. Well, the little old man, he went to live with the little magic woman, and they lived happily together. But I tell you, if you go to that cliffside even today and you listen, you will hear choo, choo, choo. And they say it's the skeleton woman trying to get back up the cliff. And she's still hungry. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ken Ogus. I'm a storyteller based in Indianapolis, and occasionally I'm called out to do oral history recording. About 10 years ago, I got a call from a man in a small town in central Ohio, and I set up my equipment in his living room, and we sat and we talked. He had come over with his family just before World War II, and his accent was still very clear. We called him Hans. We didn't use his last name. And I'm going to recount what he told me for you. He said, "My mother was a beautiful young girl when she met my father. They were married. My father had a job in the factory. And as time went on, they had the twins, my sister and me. But then the times were very bad, and my father lost his job, and he would stay at home and he'd drink. My mother, though, was a fabulous baker. She could make cookies and candies. And so she would make honeykuchen, honey cake. And she was known all around for this honey cake. And so she would bake the honey cake and the candies, take them into town and sell them to the shopkeepers. And that is how my family managed to survive. But my father, he grew angrier and resentful. And he began to bring women home while my mother was gone. And my sister and I would hide in the bedroom. My father would lock us in. One day, he comes home with a woman. We hear the laughing, the drinking. They move into the bedroom. We hear things we can't quite understand. And then my mother comes home early, and there's shouting, there are accusations. "How could you do this?" we hear my mother say. And "Put down that axe," my father says. And then we hear this terrible thwacking noise, and then a blood-curdling cry. My mother, the blood in her throat. And my sister and I were crying, "Mutti, Mutti, is everything okay?" And everything's quiet. And hours later, we get out of the bedroom, and we look, and there's blood on the floor, on the walls. And My father has taken all of my mother's possessions, all of her clothes, her books, her artwork, and piled them in the front of the cottage, and he set them on fire, taken all of her candy-making things and tossed them out onto the front lawn. He says, "Your mother doesn't love you anymore. She's not coming back." We cried for our mother. In time, my father remarried, and my stepmother did not like children. And things were growing worse back in Germany, a famine. And so they talked about how they were going to feed all of us. But one day my father takes us out. He says, "I'm going to go scout out some lumber trees. You come with me." And he led us into the forest and lit a fire for us as the sun was going down. And there we waited for him, but he did not come back. In the morning, we were cold and hungry, and we noticed that there were bees in the forest, and they had been collecting pollen, and they were all going to the same place. We followed them, beautiful little cottage. The door was unlocked. We went inside, and there were candies and cookies everywhere, and we were so hungry. But just as we were about to eat, a woman who lived there came back with a hood pulled over her face. And she came in. She was not upset to see us. She was actually very kind. And she said, "Oh, please, Kinder, eat some of the Honeykuchen." And so we ate. And she pulls her hood back. And she was horrible looking. She had a terrible scar under one eye, up over the other. And we looked at her, and she looked at us. She said, "Does the Honeykuchen taste familiar, Kinder?" He says, "This is just like our mother used to make." She said, "It's because I am your mother. Come to me." And we all hugged and cried, and we stayed with my mother. There we helped her sell her cookies and candies to the stores. But you know, my father had spread rumors about her being a witch to the townsfolk. And then one day, a very official-looking car pulls up. It is my father in a Nazi uniform. And he comes up to us. He says, "I found you. I'm going to bring you back." Well, my mother steps forward. She was not afraid of him this time. She said, "You're not going to take my children from me again." And he pulls out a Luger. He points it right at her. And she just reaches up with her little hand and grabs the gun barrel and tips it down. Says, "Outside." They walked outside. They went past the beehives that my mother kept. And my father looked at him and says, "These bees, I hated the bees when you lived at the other cottage." And he kicked the stand out from under the hive, and the hive broke open. Thousands upon thousands of bees came out, and they stung him, and he screamed, and he died. My mother come back for us, and she says, "Children, we need to leave now." You see, we fled Germany just in time before the craziness really started. We came to the United States of America, to this little town in Ohio. Now, my mother died years ago, and my sister, Gretel, well, she died just last month. But you see, young man, it was important for me to tell you my story because, listen carefully, ordinary people can spread rumors and lies and create a monster out of someone as beautiful as my mother. But also these people, these ordinary people, they can become monsters. So beware, young man, he said. There really are monsters in the world. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Lisa Champelli, and the story that I have to share tonight is called La Muerta, Godmother Death. And this story begins on El Día de los Muertos. The Day of the Dead is celebrated as a holiday in Mexico. It is a time when family and friends come together in rejoicing and remember those who have died. For death is not something to be feared, but instead is regarded as a companion on the path of human experience. And that is how Antonio in this story regards La Muerta, as a compañero. You see, Antonio and his wife, they had 8 children born to them, but 4 died in their infancy, and so they were familiar with La Muerta. And on El Día de los Muertos, they would picnic by the grave sites of their children. Although they had little, they would bring with them food and candles and flowers, and they would leave them in the cemetery. And they would leave a loaf of bread by the side of the road for La Muerta. But this year, on this El Día de los Muertos, Antonio and his wife celebrated because they had a new child born to them, a son. And it was considered good fortune to have a child born on the Day of the Dead. And so Antonio knew that he must find a special madrina, a special godmother for this child. And he went out into the village to seek a madrina who could provide his child with the things that were most dear to them, with justice, with mercy, and with power. And he walked alone by himself into the village, and the first person that he encountered was the wealthiest woman in the village. She rode toward him in her carriage pulled by splendid horses and rolled down the window and said, "Antonio, hola, why are you walking alone this day?" And Antonio explained, "I have a child born, a son, and I am searching for a very special madrina." "Why, Antonio, I could be godparent to your child. My family is wealthy and old. We could provide him with riches and power, and his toys would be made of gold." Now, normally Antonio would be delighted to have such a wealthy woman as godmother for his child. But for this child, he wanted something more than wealth. And he said to the wealthy woman, "Yes, you have riches and power, but you are not just, and you are not merciful. Your children play with golden toys while mine nearby are starving. I'm sorry, I seek something more for this child." And so he continued walking, and he encountered next a woman dressed all in rags, her head and feet bare, and he recognized her as one of the holy women of the village. And she greeted him, "Antonio, buenos dias. I hear that you have a child born to you this day. I would like to be madrina to your son. You know that I could provide him with justice and mercy mild." "Oh, yes," Antonio thought. "Yes, you are very wise and just and merciful, but you are poor like I am, and there is no power in poverty. Thank you, but I seek more for my child than you are able to offer." And Antonio walked on. And next he met a tall, very thin woman who was dressed in gauzy cloth from head to toe, and she walked toward him with the grace and confidence of a woman who was used to going wherever she wanted. And she approached Antonio and said, "I know that you have a child, a son born to you this day. I would like to be madrina, such as you are seeking at this hour, for you know that I could provide him with justice, with mercy, and with power." "Who are you?" asked Antonio. "Antonio, do you not know me? 4 times I have visited your home already. I am La Muerta. I am death." "Ah, yes," said Antonio. "You are merciful. When pain and suffering have no end, you are able to take away the pain, and you are just because you take from the poor and the rich alike, and there is no power on earth that can stand to yours. Yes, you shall be madrina for my son." And satisfied that he had found the best madrina, the best godmother for his son, Antonio returned home. And his son Julio grew well and strong and quickly, and when he became a man, his madrina taught him about all the plants and herbs and explained all of their healing qualities. And Julio became the best healer in the land. His skills were sought out, and he was desired as a healer more than the doctors. And there was one day that Julio learned that the king of the land was ill, and no one had been able to cure him. And the king had declared that whoever was able to heal him would receive half of his kingdom as gratitude. And Julio knew then that this was why he had come into his family on El Dia de los Muertos. He was confident that he would be able to help the king, for his madrina, La Muerta, had shown him the most powerful herb, a yellow flower called La Hierba de la Vida. And she had explained to him that this herb could bring the dying back to life. But she had told him to remember two things about this herb. She told him that there were times that he should withhold it for charity when life would be more painful. And she said, when you are in the room with the dying, you will find me there as well. And if you see me standing at the foot of the bed, you may administer La Hierba de la Vida. But if you see me standing at the head of the bed, you must not give it, for that means that I have come to claim my own. And Julio remembered this, and he cured a great many people. He cured the wealthy and the poor alike, and there were times that he withheld because he knew that it would be kinder not to cure. And there were times that he said, Lo siento, la muerta has already come for this one. There is no helping. But he was confident when he strode into the bedroom of the king. He was confident that he would be able to help. And he brought with him La Hierba de la Vida, and he looked around the room, and he saw La Muerta standing at the head of the bed. Oh no, La Muerta, if only I can cheat you this one time. It would be for the benefit of my family. And so he called out, air, air, the king needs air. Quickly, turn the bed around so that his head is by the window. And they did. They quickly turned the bed so that the king's head was by the window. And now La Muerta was standing at the foot of the bed. And Julio gave La Hierba de la Vida to the king. And instantly the king stood up. And everyone in the room stared in amazement at the king and then at Julio. But Julio stared into the severe eyes of his madrina, La Muerta, who pointed at him and said, do not ever do that again, or I will come for you. And the king remembered his promise, and he gave Julio half his kingdom and invited him to court, where Julio won the heart of the king's daughter. And they were to be married. But a week before the wedding, the princess fell ill. And Julio felt that his world had shattered because none of his remedies were helping her. He saw the color draining from her face, and he feared that she was slipping away from him. And so he brought out La Hierba de la Vida, and he held it to his beloved. He held it to her lips, and then he looked up and saw La Muerta standing at the head of the bed. No, madrina, have mercy. Do not take my beloved from me. She is to be my life partner. Please, this is the last time I will disobey you. And he quickly turned the bed around so that La Muerta was standing at the foot of the bed, and he gave La Hierba de la Vida to the princess, and she recovered. And Julio waited to feel the clutch of death grab his shoulder, but La Muerta had gone. And the next week, the princess and Julio were married, and they spent their wedding night in each other's arms. And just before dawn, Julio heard a knock on their chamber door, and he got up and opened it, and there on the other side he saw the ghostly figure of La Muerta beckoning to him. and he was compelled to follow his madrina. He was compelled to follow La Muerta out of the castle and along roads he did not recognize. They walked for miles until he came to a great cavern, and he followed La Muerta inside down winding trails that led to a great open space that was lit by thousands upon thousands of candles. It appeared that their light was dancing. As one candle burned out and the next burst into flame, the light danced around the room, and Julio asked, "What is this?" La Muerta answered him, "These are the lights of people's lives." "Where is my candle?" And La Muerta pointed to the ground at Julio's feet. Was a very small candle. The wick was almost burned out, the flame beginning to sputter. "Oh no, La Muerta, have mercy on me. I am newly married." "Julio, I have shown you mercy more than once." And she pointed at another candle. This one was tall and round, and the flame was just bursting into life. "Whose candle is that?" asked Julio. "That is the candle of your child, your son." "Oh, madrina, spare me. I want to meet my son." "Julio, I have shown you mercy, and I have shown you and your family great power, and now I must show you justice." And as Julio bowed his head, La Muerta bent over and blew out his candle.
My name is Heather Perry, and this telling is based on the story Self-Contained by Kristen McDevitt. Marguerite held the dead bird in her hands. There were 2 neat red holes in the breast, just there, and really not very much blood at all. It was just kind of rumpled, and the head lolled against her fingers as she smoothed the feathers. It was a sparrow. That wasn't the important part. The important part was that this was the 3rd bird this week, and she found this one, as she'd found the others, neatly lined up on her front porch. Now, Marguerite had put up flyers in the neighborhood. She'd been to the neighborhood meetings. She'd even stuffed mailboxes, educating her neighbors on the dangers that predators, say a house cat left out outside at night, the dangers these animals pose to sleeping, roosting birds. Oh, clearly someone wasn't listening, and just as clearly, Marguerite was going to have to take matters into her own hands. Now, the man at the meat counter swore up and down that not even the most fat, overfed, pampered house cat could possibly resist fresh, bloody meat. So she spent a few extra dollars, and she had the man grind up a very nice piece of beef, and she brought it home and arranged it in a bowl, attractively. And she placed the bowl inside the trap. Now, this was a clever thing. It was a large metal wire box, and it was closed at one end. It had a trigger in the middle, and then at the far end was an angled door. The idea being that that fat little tabby down the street would get so distracted by the juicy meat that she'd wedge herself in the trap, step on the trigger, the door would close, and she'd be caught. Marguerite didn't wish the cat any ill will. She just needed evidence. She wanted to be able to take the cat to its owner and say, "This is yours. Please keep it inside at night," because she didn't know if it was the fat tabby or the ginger Tom down the street or that weird little calico that came around and yelled at her sometimes. She didn't know. So she set up the trap and tested the trigger, and it worked. She was satisfied. She went to bed that night and slept peacefully for about 45 minutes. And then after that, every little sound outside would make her start awake. Is that it? No, that's just leaves. Okay. How about now? No, twig snap. We're fine. Wind? Okay. All right. So about 3 in the morning, she finally heard the trap close and a low growl. And then she knew that the morning would surely bring answers. So she went to sleep and snuggled in. Except the morning only brought more problems, because occupying the trap so completely she wasn't sure how it got in there in the first place was the largest, spikiest, angriest black cat she'd ever seen in her life. This thing was easily the size of a small dog, like a Kelpie or a Shetland. And worse yet, this cat was a stranger. She had never seen this thing on her street before in her life. It had no collar, so this was a big problem. She couldn't take the cat to the owner. She didn't know who that was. She didn't want to take the cat to the pound because if it was feral, well, it wouldn't get a home. And she couldn't let it out again because if it was the murderer, well, that kind of defeats the whole purpose of this exercise. So in the end, Marguerite put the cat in her bathroom. That was the best place for it. I mean, the tile floors, easy cleanup if Kitty got angry or vengeful. Small room, nothing to hide under, perfect solution. Satisfied with her plan, Marguerite picked up the trap, surprised at how light it felt. Given the size of the animal, she carried it indoors, put it down, and as she did so, her finger slipped through the wire mesh. And she was startled because the cat's fur was the softest, downiest fur she'd ever felt in her life. So much so that she risked a second pat, eliciting a spit and a howl. And then one baleful yellow eye rolled to glare at her, and there was such menace in this cat that when she gingerly released the trap door and watched it start to wedge itself out one massive paw at a time, she abandoned any pretense of hospitality and ran for the door. Well, she got it shut just in time to feel the impact of the heavy body on the other side. And now what? Well, if her husband had been here, this escalation would now be his responsibility. But they had agreed, and hadn't they both agreed now to keep their lives and their problems separate? In any case, at this hour of the morning, he was probably sitting down to breakfast with his new wife, not his younger or thinner or even prettier new wife, just new. No, Marguerite could not call her husband. The door was rattling rather ominously, and she briefly thought of calling Mark, her son. Except Mark was always so busy. He was always about to have an important phone call. He was heading in for a meeting. He was in the car. I can't talk. And she suspected that if she pressed him, he would consider this entire thing ridiculous, that she was ridiculous. He always did tend to side with his father on certain things. And Marguerite discovered that she didn't want to press the issue. Their relationship was fine. He always remembered her birthday, after all. That's important. In the end, she called her daughter Kim. And of course, instantly Kim wanted to know, what are you doing with the animal trap? Why is there a cat in your bathroom? And why do you care about these stupid birds? It's nature, red in tooth and claw, like Coleridge, right? No, said Marguerite. Tennyson. It's a poem by Tennyson, and she could actually hear her daughter roll her eyes over the phone. That doesn't matter, Mom. Kim had to drop Liam off at daycare, and she was running late. After that, she needed to pick up the dry cleaning. After that, it was her half day at work, and she was very busy. And she supposed, if this cat thing wasn't going to take a long time, maybe, just maybe, she'd have time to pop by and see, possibly. And Marguerite had to content herself with that. So, 2 cups of peppermint tea and an hour of feigning indifference later, and she discovered that she couldn't just wait for someone to pop by anymore. She wanted to check on the cat. It was very quiet, ominously so. So maybe Kitty had calmed down and was sulking under the tub. She'd just go and open the door and put her head in and see. Easy, no problem. She walked down the hall, turned the handle, and the door only opened about a hand's breadth. Maybe something was jammed on the other side. Maybe the cat had rucked up the bath mat. They do that sometimes. So she pushed a little bit, and then suddenly, filling the door from bottom to top, filling the door was a wall of black, spiky, rippling fur. And as Marguerite was trying to understand what she was seeing, a paw the size of a small dog, surely a Kelpie or a Shetland, whipped out around the corner and caught her wrist. and the blood began to bead, and the blood began to fall, and Marguerite abandoned the door and stumbled backwards down the hall as this cat began to spill into the hallway because, as everyone knows, cats are technically a liquid. Well, at the forefront of the feline tide, Marguerite finally gained her front door, passed through it, and shut it just in time to feel the heavy impact on the other side. And she slid down her front door and sat on her porch, and she thought, I should put something on this cut. She thought, it's kind of cold out here. I should go inside and get a sweater. I've got my phone in my pocket. I should call someone, but there's no one to call. And surely her daughter Kim would be popping by any second, but Marguerite found that she wasn't entirely sure she wanted to see her daughter anymore. She was in two minds about it. She was in two minds about a lot of things. And if she turned her head to look over to her left, she could just make out one glaring yellow eye through her upstairs bedroom window, and it would wink out and disappear, but it wasn't gone. It would never be gone, ever. And she sat and she scratched at her wrist because the blood had dried and begun to flake, and there was something in the wound. There was something growing out of the wound. It was long black hairs, and they rippled as she looked at them, and they made her feel her funny. They made her stomach hurt. They made her feel as if there was a set of claws, sharp and new grown, flexing in her stomach. And Marguerite thought about a cat bound by a trap, and she thought about a cat bound by a room. And then she thought about a cat bound by a house. And she wondered what would happen when she opened the door and let this enormous, furious thing out into the wide and boundless world. And she smiled.
I'm not going to tell a story. I mean, to be perfectly honest, I'm the comedy relief. If things get too gruesome, I'm the person who comes in and I sing a little love story. As soon as they turn up this on. Or I sing a song about a family. And I'm not going to sing a pretty song. I'm going to sing a song written, believe it or not, by a mathematics professor from Harvard. Most known by most children, or actually people under the age of 40, for two songs that he wrote, one called Silent E, and the other one L-Y. But some of the older people may know these songs. So I'm going to sing you a pretty little Irish ballad. About a maid I sing a song, sing rickety-tickety-tin. About a maid I sing a song who did not have her family long. Not only did she do them wrong, she did every one of them in. She did every one of them in. One morning in a fit of pique, sing rickety-tickety-tin. One morning in a fit of pique, she drowned her father in the creek. The water tasted bad for a week, and we had to make do with gin, we had to make do with gin. Her mother she could never stand, sing rickety-tickety-tin. Her mother she could never stand, and so a cyanide soup she planned. Her mother died with a spoon in her hand, and her face in a hideous grin, a grin, her face in a hideous grin. She set her sister's hair on fire, sing rickety-tickety-tin. She set her sister's hair on fire, and as the smoke and flames grew higher, she danced around the funeral pyre, playing a violin, playing a violin. She weighted her brother down with stones, saying rickety-tickety-tin. She weighted her brother down with stones and sent him off to Davy Jones. All they ever found were some bones and occasional pieces of skin, occasional pieces of skin. One day when she had nothing to do, sing rickety-tickety-tin. One day when she had nothing to do, she cut her baby brother in two and served him up as an Irish stew and invited the neighbors in, invited the neighbors in. And when at last the police came by, sing rickety-tickety-tin. And when at last the police came by, her little prank she did not deny, for to do so she would have had to lie. And lying she knew was a sin, a sin. Lying she knew was a sin. My tragic tale I won't prolong, sing rickety-tickety-tin. My tragic tale I won't prolong, and if you did not enjoy my song, you've yourselves to blame if it's too long. You should never have let me begin, should never have let me begin. And it's time. We told you if you left, you'd be able to come back in. If they close the doors, we won't let you out. The reason is that for the next song, which I do dedicate to my second wife, I hold your hand in mine, dear. I press it to my lips. I take a healthy bite of your dainty fingertips. My joy would be complete, dear, if you were only here. But still I keep your hand as a precious souvenir. The night you died, I cut it off. I really don't know why. For now, each time I kiss it, I get blood stains on my tie. Yuck. I'm sorry now I killed you, for love was something fine. But till they come and get me, I will hold your hand in mine. I have to admit, though, I am looking forward to the end of the night. See, I like to hold my current wife's hand, too.
Hello, my name is Mary Frazier, and I have been following Keith's comic relief for 30 years in a program that we do here at the Public Library called Extravaganza for preschoolers, which this is definitely not. I don't let him sing those songs to the preschoolers. But it's always hard to just turn the mood around after Keith. So I have a story that I learned the best way you can learn a story, and that's by listening to other storytellers tell it. I learned it from a storytelling duo that call themselves Ethnotech. Sometimes they come to Storytelling Arts of Indiana up in Indianapolis. If they ever come up there, you must go see them. They are fabulous. But I learned this story by listening to them tell it, and it's called Hoichi. Now, this story is a legend, but it's based on a true event that happened over 800 years ago, a great naval battle between two warring clans, the Taira and the Minamoto clans, fighting to the death for control over ancient Japan. Now, Hoichi was born to a very poor family, and he was blind. But he was taught from a very early age how to play an instrument called the biwa, a kind of lute with 4 strings. And he could sing. He sang beautiful romantic songs. He sang epic songs of battles. He sang historical pieces. And he traveled all around singing for anyone who would listen and pay him a little bit of money. He had a friend who was a priest who worked at a temple at a place called Donaura. And that was the site of the great battle hundreds of years before between the Taira and the Minamoto families. And he invited Hoichi to come and live there. He could have a room for free, and he could have food to eat, and all he had to do was sing sometimes for the priest and the monks and the acolytes and the visitors there at the temple. So Hoichi happily accepted. Now he lived in harmony there with his friend, the priest, and the monks, and others who came to the temple for quite a long time. But one evening it happened that he found himself alone in the temple. His friend and his friend's acolyte had gone out to perform a service for a member of the congregation, and he was alone there on a hot, hot night, a night too hot to stay inside and try to sleep. So he sat out on the veranda off of his room where there was a small garden at the back of the temple, plucking away at his biwa, trying to feel cool enough to sleep or waiting for his friend to return, when he heard footsteps coming across the garden. Now, these were heavy footprints, not the ones of his friend. He wouldn't recognize those. And he heard a voice, harsh and commanding, call out, "Hoichi!" "Hi," said Hoichi, "but I am blind. I cannot see to whom I'm speaking." And the voice softened a small bit, and he said, "I have come to you from my master, a wealthy and important man who has come here to visit the site of the Battle of Donaura. He has come with many noble people and is staying nearby, and we have heard that you sing the epic Battle of Donaura, and we want you to come and perform for us tonight." Hoichi was thrilled. It was his favorite thing to do, was to interpret the battle and to sing and to make all of the sound effects with his biwa. He could make the battle seem to come alive. So he readily agreed to go. And he got up and put on his sandals and collected his biwa and reached out for the man with the commanding voice to lead him to this place to perform. And he felt an arm that was almost as hard as steel. And as they walked along, he heard clanging. And so he knew this man was in full body armor. And he was led out into the forest, and the man made him walk faster than he was comfortable, but he had no choice. He had to follow. And he led him through the woods to a place where there was a big, felt like stone kind of arch, a gate of some sort he seemed to sense around him, and a place where he didn't think there were any structures at all, any buildings. It was not a place he knew. And he led him in to what seemed to be an enormous open room, a performance hall. And he could hear screens opening and closing along the sides, and he could hear the rustles of fine silks, kimono, and people's feet moving across the floor as people came in and settled. And they led him up to a platform and had him sit on silken pillows. And he could hear them whispering, "It's him, it's him, it's him, it's him, it's him." And then there was quiet. And Hoichi knew they were ready for him to begin. And so he struck a chord with the biwa, and he began to sing and recite the epic story of the Battle of Donaura that happened out on the ocean just beyond where they were. And he made it sound like oars dipping into the water, and creaking ships facing one another, and arrows sighing through the air from one ship to another, and of the clinking of spears against full armor, and swords clashing. And then he made the cries of the wounded and dying, and as he did, he could hear moaning and sighing and crying in his audience. He had never elicited such an emotional response before. And then he told of the people, the brave Taira, who were being defeated by the Minamoto, rather than live in shame and defeat, taking their own lives by jumping into the savage waters of the ocean. And then grandmother Taira, the matriarch of her clan, picked up the young emperor Antoko, who was only 6 years old, and leapt into the water with her grandson. And when he told that, the whole hall before him broke into sobs and open, loud grief. He had never heard such a reaction to his singing and his playing. And he had reached the end, and there was quiet. And then he heard the voice of his escort come and say, "Hoichi, my master is much impressed with you. He would like for you to return. We are visiting here for 6 more days, and we would like to hear you come and recite the Battle of Donaura again every night for 6 nights. But you must not tell a soul that we are here, for we are here undercover, under secrecy. And you must not tell anyone what you are doing." And Hoichi agreed. And so the samurai, for now he had decided this must be a samurai, led him back to the temple, to his very own veranda, in what seemed to be a very quick time. And so all day the next day, Hoichi rested and contemplated what would happen that night when he returned back to this, what must be a great lord and his noble people there. And he was waiting on the veranda, ready to go that night when the escort came to take him on to where he would perform. And he went out into the dark night. Now his friend the priest hadn't seen him all day, and he came to find him in his room, but was shocked that Hoichi was not there. He wasn't on the veranda. He searched the whole temple, and he was nowhere. And the priest began to be curious. What would a blind man be doing out wandering around after midnight at night? He had never done such a thing before. And he called the other monks and his acolytes to him and asked if they knew what was happening, and no one knew. And so he said, "Tomorrow night we will watch. We will watch and see where Hoichi goes." So the next day he asked Hoichi, but of course Hoichi wouldn't tell him. So that night they had to follow him quietly from a distance, and they saw Hoichi get up and walk off the veranda, go through the garden, go through the woods, moving very quickly. It was almost as though he were running or even floating or flowing across the ground. And he moved so quickly, they were so surprised, caught off guard, they couldn't keep up with him. And they followed out into the dense forest, and then they heard the strum of the biwa. And they heard the sound of Hoichi's voice as he began the opening of the Battle of Donaura. And they followed that sound. And they were shocked to find him sitting in the cemetery of the Taira clan. And he was lost in a reverie. He was under a spell as he played the biwa, and he sang as no one had ever heard him sing and play before. And all around him, there were hundreds of tiny, flickering green flames. Oni-bi, the restless spirits of the Taira clan, gathered there to hear him sing of the disastrous battle they had fought so many years before. And the priest was terrified for Hoichi, and he called out. He said, "Hoichi-san! Hoichi!" Hoichi didn't answer. He was lost in this spell, and he could not be reached. And so they stood and waited until he was done, and they saw him get up and make his way back to the temple. Well, the next morning, the priest went to him and said, Hoichi, what have you been doing? And Hoichi refused to tell him. And he said, but we saw you. We followed you last night. Do you not know you have been going to the cemetery? Hoichi had no idea. He said, you have been singing to the restless spirits of the Taira clan. And if you continue going, they will destroy you when they are done with you. And then your spirit will belong to them forever. Hoichi, you must not let this happen. Hoichi was terrified. But the priest said, I know what to do. You must follow exactly what I tell you to do. So he made him remove all of his clothing. And the priest took black ink and a brush, and he began to paint words, holy sutras, prayers, all over Hoichi's entire body, head to toe, even on the soles of his feet. And these holy words, these sutras, would protect him from the spirits of the Taira. And he said, now tonight you must dress, you must sit out on your veranda, and you must be completely quiet and completely still. And he finished painting the last sutra just as it was time for Hoichi to prepare. And he went out and he sat there on the veranda, still and silent, waiting. And he heard those footsteps coming as what he knew now to be a ghostly samurai came toward him. And he heard the voice say, Hoichi, come. And Hoichi didn't say a word. Hoichi, I tell you now, you must come. And Hoichi didn't move a muscle. And so the samurai came up onto the veranda and began to search and look around. Hoichi, Hoichi, where are you? Ah, there is your biwa. I will take that so that my lord knows that I have completed my errand. And then he said, oh, but there I see. You cannot make sound, for your mouth has disappeared, but I do see your ears. I will take those with me so that my lord knows I completed my errand. And then Hoichi felt ice-cold hands like iron grabbing his ears. And then, they were ripped from his head. Hoichi sat in silent agony as blood dripped from where his ears had been down his neck. And the samurai took his ears and took his biwa and marched off into the night and was never seen again. Now in time, Hoichi recovered from his wounds, and this story made him famous throughout the land, and he traveled and he became very wealthy and successful. But from that time on, he was known as Minato Hoichi, Hoichi the Earless One. I just want to leave you with one last image. They say that that was one of the largest mass suicides known of in Japan. That truly happened. And many people report seeing these strange green flame lights, especially along the coastline where the battle happened. And fishermen who fish for crab will pull up a crab every now and then that has the face of a samurai in the shell on its back. And when they do, out of respect for the Taira, they throw that crab back. So that's another legend about the Danaura.
Well, I think Mary changed the mood quite effectively. My name is David. I'm going to tell you a traditional story from Brittany, and I have to admit I didn't find this in a library. I bought the book. Brittany is the most westerly part of France. It punches out into the Atlantic Ocean like a fist made of granite, and the knuckles are the mountains that run down the middle of Brittany called the Black Mountains. Now, granite does not have many plants growing on it. It's difficult for there to be soil on it. And those mountains, those hills, are bare with just a little earth, a few grasses, heather. But in between those ridges, there are valleys, and the valleys are green and lush with grass and the plentiful rain, and the apples grow there. It's good in the valleys. There's a village in each of those valleys, and in the year 1372, in the village of Caervalley, 2 boys were born just a week or 2 apart. And it wasn't long before they found one another and became the firmest of friends. From then on, they were inseparable. If there was any mischief, people never looked for one boy, they looked for 2 who had done it, who had accidentally broken a pot, who had stolen the apples from the priest's tree. Well, the years went by, the boys grew up. Pierre was one of them, Jan was the name of the other. And as they grew up, they became more serious. They looked to work, they looked at girls. And they swore to one another that each would be the best man at the other's wedding. And so it would have been, except for one thing. They both fell in love with the same girl. Oh, Marguerite, she was a beauty. Her red hair, her green eyes, and that smile that lit up her face. Each of the boys, Pierre and Jan, asked her to marry. It was not easy for her. Both boys were pleasant. Both boys were fun. Both boys were serious and would work hard. And she put them off one day after another, a week, a month, several months. Both boys, still young men, wanted to marry Marguerite. Now, it happened in the next village over the ridge of Granite Hills. A small child was born, and born to a mother who was not married. At this time, that was really serious. Born out of wedlock. The child was sickly and could die at any time. And if the babe died before he had been christened, he would be denied heaven. He had to have a godfather. No man wanted to take that role because they knew that people would say, "Oh, he's really the father." Well, that poor sickly child, what could be done? Now, Jan was a good man. He said, "I will stand as godfather." And so he walked over the hills, over those bare uplands, down into the next valley, to the church where he stood as godfather to the child. The child was christened, and it was just in time, for it was only a few hours later that the poor babe breathed no more. But at least he had got to paradise. Well, as night was falling, Jan walked up the stony path that led over the hills, and he got close to the top. And there was a stunted tree that the winds had not totally destroyed. And there was something hanging from it. And as Jan got closer, it looked like a body. And as he got really close, he could see it was a body. It was Pierre. He had hanged himself from the tree. He had denied himself heaven. He had condemned his soul to hell. What could have come over him to do this? And Jan had to leave him there, for it was against the teachings of the church to cut him down. He would have to hang there while the carrion birds pecked out his eyes and ripped the bloodless flesh from his bones. Jan hurried back down into the village with the news back to Kervale. What could have caused Pierre to do it? And he found out that Marguerite had told Pierre that she had chosen Jan to be her husband for his Christian charity in standing as godfather to that poor child. And Pierre, driven mad by as much pride as anything else, had hanged himself. Well, what was there to do? Jan and Marguerite would get married, but Jan would have no best man for his marriage. He could not ask anybody else to replace his good friend, Pierre. And so they got married. And afterwards there was a feast and there was dancing, and it was subdued, but still, in holy wedlock, it needed to be celebrated. And just as the musicians started to play, the door of the hall creaked open, and there, standing in the doorway, was Pierre. I have come to dance with the bride, as is my right, as best man. Oh, Jan, he said, oh no, you were my friend, but no, you still have the smell of sulfur about you. You will not dance with Marguerite. All right. But you must do something for me in exchange. You must come to where I hang on the hill tonight at midnight and meet me there. Jan, he still loved his friend. He said, all right, I'll do it. Marguerite begged him not to, but he did. The night fell. It was dark. He walked up the path to where that lone tree stood. And there, waiting for him, was Pierre. You have come to me, and now my powers are stronger than yours. I will take you down to hell with me, and you will not enjoy your wife any more than Marguerite is mine. And with that, there was a crack, and the earth opened up, and the flicker of lights, of flames was there, and the smell of sulfur rose up from hell. And Pierre reached to Jan and was about to lay hold upon him when there was a sound of horses' hooves. And over the ridge from the next valley came a white horse, and on the white horse was a knight in full shining armor. Oh no, Jan is not going with you. He is coming with me, said the knight as he looked down at the two of them. You have condemned yourself to hell forever, Pierre, and there you will go. And with one gesture, Pierre was flung back and down through that crack in the earth which closed on his scream. "Come with me now," said the knight, and helped Jan up onto the horse behind him and rode down back to Care Valley to the house where Marguerite was waiting. Who are you?" asked Jan. I am the soul you saved for heaven, and I have come to save you." And so Jan and Marguerite lived a long and happy life, and probably went to heaven. But Pierre, for all eternity, is in hell.
My name's Jenny Ritchie. I was actually at the very first Festival of Ghost Stories, and it's great to be here. How many years later? At any rate, I've been listening to stories for a long time, and they're stories that just seem like I've always known them. I don't remember when I first heard them, but there are a few stories that I remember clearly the first time I heard them. The first time I heard a true ghost story, it was in the late 50s. It was a slumber party at Nikki Skeen's house. There were 5 of us girls in our brand new baby doll pajamas, except for Diana Wellman, and she was still wearing little girl pajamas. But she was the one who told us she had an older cousin who went to Vincent High School, and her cousin had a friend, and this happened to his friend. Really. His friend had just gotten his driver's license, and he did what you do when you get your driver's license. You beg for the family car, and you go driving. He had a Saturday afternoon, and he had the car, and he drove all the way up to Huntington. He drove all around Ritter Park, and at the back of Ritter Park, there's that steep hill and that road that goes up to the gallery with all those twists and turns that take you up to the top. And he went up there, and he drove around the maze of roads around the gallery till it got dark, and it started to rain, and he knew he had better get back down that hill. Now, when he started down the hill, he realized that his windshield wipers were only giving him a little glimpse every now and then of where he was going, and the headlights hit the rain that was coming down, and he couldn't see too well, so he went very slowly. And it was a good thing, because just as he came to that first sharp turn, in his headlights, there was a girl standing in the road right in front of him, and she was waving, "Stop, stop." Well, his feet hit the clutch and the brake just like that, and he stopped. Even though it was pouring rain, he got out of the car. Could he help her? She looked terrible. I mean, she'd been out in the rain, but she was wearing one of those formal dresses with the big skirts that you would wear to a prom or a fancy dance, and she'd had her hair all put up, but the rain had kind of made it straggle around her face, and it was clear that she'd been crying. Her mascara was just streaked down her cheeks, and she ran up to him and she said, "Oh, please, can you take me home? I just live on the other side of Ritter Park. Please, won't you take me home?" Well, sure, he'd give her a ride home. He looked at how cold and shivery she was, and he took off his warm Vincent High School Tigers jacket, splendid in black and orange, and he put it around her shoulders, and he helped her into the back seat of the car where he could get all those skirts in. And then she told him her name was Sherry Anderson, And she told him her address and how to find the house right there on 4th Street, just off the park. And he put the car in first gear, and you know, he went down that hill so slowly he never got out of first gear till he got to the bottom. And then he drove through the dark park, and he drove down 4th Street, and he looked for the house numbers, and he found her house, and he pulled over to the curb. "Whew, we made it," he said. "You're home now." There was no answer from the back seat. So he got out, and he opened the back door to help her out, and she wasn't there. There was no one in the car. He knew she'd been there. The seat was all wet where she'd been sitting, but how had she gotten out of the car? She must have jumped out as soon as he pulled up to the curb, but he hadn't heard the door open or shut, but that's what must have happened, right? She must have just run on up to the house, and he'd better make sure she got there safely. So he went on up to the house and rang the doorbell, and after a minute the door opened and an older couple looked out at him, and the man said, "What do you want, son?" "Oh, excuse me," he said, I just wanted to see if your daughter got home all right." He looked past them, and on a table there in the entryway, he could see her picture in a gold frame, so he knew he was in the right house. And he said, I just saw her up on the hill, and she wanted me to bring her home, and when I got down here, she wasn't in the car. She must have jumped out. I just wanted to be sure she got in all right." The man looked at him. "What kind of game do you think you're playing?" he said. "It isn't funny." He said, "Our daughter, Sherry, isn't coming home anytime." He said, she was in a car accident up on that hill years ago. She was killed. She's resting in Golden Oak Cemetery," he said. "She isn't ever coming home." And he shut the door. Huh? Killed? What was going on? The guy drove home thinking, she was real. She talked to me. You know, how would I have known her address? How would I have known her name? And then he said, she was wet. You know, the seat was wet. Ghosts don't get wet. And then he thought, and she's got my jacket. He couldn't figure it out. The next day on a Sunday afternoon, he got the car again and he went driving, and this time he drove up by the cemetery. He thought he'd just look around a little and he'd probably see if there was a graveyard marker for her. He got out of the car and, whoa, who knew there were so many dead people? That place was full of stones. There were hundreds of stones. How would you ever find just one grave in all of those? Oh, he saw something orange and black, something familiar. And he went straight up there. He went up to a modest little stone and laid over that stone, draped just like it had been put over a girl's shoulders. There was his Vinson High School black and orange tiger jacket. And he read the name on. It was her name, her dates, the day she died was exactly the same day that he had picked her up, only it was 10 years earlier. And he knew that he had, in fact, picked up a ghost desperate to go home. Oh, Kay and Nikki and Ty and I were all huddled together. We knew this had to be true. We knew Ritter Park. We knew that road that came down from the gallery. We knew that cemetery. And Diana Wellman's cousin knew the guy it happened to. It was true. And suddenly, I lived in a completely different world. A world where not everything had an explanation or was simple. And ever since that time, I have found myself in a world in which impossible things can happen. A world full of mystery.
Well, that's all we have time for. Thanks to the library, thanks to Parks and Rec, and especially thanks to you. Give yourselves a hand. Thanks for coming out. We hope to see you February 9th, and safe travels. All right.